Lando Norris also needs to finally learn that the start is an integral part of the race. I think it is quite unlikely that they will win the Constructors' Championship. A little bit of chaos is necessary, and that applies to both Audi and Alpine.
Hello dear Formula One fans, Motorsport-Magazin friends and experts on minimum weight. Welcome to the summer break edition of the AVD Motorsport-Magazin with Christian Danner. Hello Christian, all right.
And hello, I have the scale in the background, no question about it.
Very good, because our other Christian was unfortunately disqualified from this show. His set of tires was newer, was too light on the return from Spa, but luckily we still have another Christian. And the exciting thing is, it's hard to believe, but 14 out of 24 races in this record season are already done. That means it's not quite halftime, we're already a bit past it. But we have now reached the summer break. And to start, before we get to our main topics, Christian, a brief and concise summary of the 2024 Formula One season so far. How have you enjoyed it up to now, and what grade would you assign to the whole thing?
Well, I have really enjoyed it immensely, with all the problems that came with it, with all the scandals we witnessed, and all the action on the track. I liked it very, very much, and it was especially enjoyable because it was unpredictable, which I found to be the most exciting part. And when I ponder on the fact that the CEO, the head of Formula E, had offered a sum of $250,000 at the start of this year for a charitable event that Formula E can select, in the event that Verstappen does not win every single race, I thought to myself, well, that he only placed the bet of $250,000 because otherwise he would have ended up being quite poor now. It was a fantastic first half of the season, a bit extended now, summer break, I do believe. The mood is actually not such that everyone is exhausted, because there is a lot of positive energy, positive vibes everywhere at Mercedes, at Ferrari, at McLaren, and of course at Red Bull because they are still leading. I thought, well, it's good that and it's not like everyone is already at their limit and now saying, I need a break of 2 or 3 weeks, but it is still really beautiful. And I do believe Spa was truly the perfect event on the journey into the summer vacation.
Even though it rained a bit on Saturday and it wasn't quite so summery, but that's part of Spa, you know.
Exactly, without rain, Spa isn't Spa.
Correct. We'll come back to Spa a bit later, but let's take a quick look at the winner at the start of our first main topic, but also a bit at the loser of the weekend, which is Mercedes. You just said you already pulled out the scale. They will probably do the same in Brackley over the summer break, weighing their car repeatedly to see how heavy it really is. We have criticized McLaren in recent weeks for not properly implementing strategies and communication. Now let's take a look at Mercedes. They were disqualified because the car was too light. Is it permissible for this to happen to a team?
Yes, that really shouldn't happen, but it just did. Just like with Lando Norris, I believe, messed up the start for the umpteenth time by losing his position on the racetrack, just like the engineer responsible for Mercedes tripped himself up by setting the car's weight the way he did. And I mean, that, of course, some weight-saving measures came with the intake strategy. Sure, you don't have as much rubber on the tires, you're missing a kilo. That there is no cool-down lap in Spa where you can pick up rubber. That's another 2 kilos that you gather there, and then we're already at 3 kilos. And considering that there was a 1.5 kilo underweight, 1.5 kilos were planned as a margin, and that just wasn't enough because of a miscalculation. Yes, it was a mistake. It was really cruel for Russell. But that's just how it is. And I think the team responded well. Toto immediately took the blame and apologized. It's part of motorsport too. I remember there were often such violations, even with weight, where there was a lot of complaining, oh, that's nothing, it's just so little. That's why I think it's fantastic that Mercedes immediately said it was their responsibility, their mistake, and owned up to it. Apologies, George Russell, we are sorry.
Correct. Now we've criticized the team on one side, but on the other side, we can also praise them and say, Unlike other teams in recent races, they executed the strategy correctly, even split the strategies between both drivers, and thus achieved an absolutely unbelievable double victory on Saturday or Friday.
Well, nowadays almost nothing is unbelievable. Everything is possible, really. It just shows where we are at the moment with Formula One racing. We are in a state where everything hangs by a thread to achieve the best possible performance. It was easier with flat underbodies. We could control it better, but the aerodynamics under these underbodies beneath the cars, as they currently occur, are complex and nuanced. Is very complex and especially directly dependent on the mechanics, on how the suspension is set, how the damper springs stabilizes everything, the entire kinematics, how it all works together, always directly affects the ground clearance and dramatically impacts the aerodynamics. And once again, you could see that it can change from one weekend to another, from the very back to the very front, within the slot you are in. I mean, Mercedes is not a team that runs at the back of the field. But at the end of the leading group, they have often been, and now they are at the top of the leading group. This shows how challenging it is. Difficult it is to find the right button to press.
Now you have given a positive interim conclusion for this season so far in the past 2 years, and also at the start of this season, it would have looked anything but good for Mercedes. But now things have changed. We have witnessed 4 races, out of which 3 were victories in the last 4 races we saw. A few weeks ago, you mentioned that you wouldn't call it a breakthrough yet. Has the time come now to use that term?
Yes, now we can slowly start to consider it. Clearly, if someone wins 3 of the last 4 races, it's not just a random fluke, but the skepticism was justified because for years we've been told things would change, but nothing actually happened. And slowly but surely, the problem area has been surrounded, so to speak, and addressed, and now we can handle what we have better. Ultimately, it's always the same. It's about the car's drivability and performance. How does the driver cope with it? How does it feel to them? And how do they manage it? And that was exactly what didn't work at the start of the weekend, but worked very well at the end.
Now the big question is, has Mercedes improved so much, or are the other teams just so unpredictable now? Is it a mix of everything?
Well, I think that everyone has this problem. And there's also something else. I don't know if you noticed, but we have had very few overtaking maneuvers. So for Spa is a track where you say, yes, we can do an engine change and still make our way back up. Look at Red Bull. Spa is a track where you can say, overtaking is incredibly good. You can overtake at La Source and also in the chicane at the bus stop chicane. You can overtake at Kemmel at the first chicane at the end of the long straight. There's a long DRS zone, so overtaking should be easy. But no, the only one overtaken was Nico Hülkenberg, but otherwise there was no overtaking. And now the question is, going back to what we discussed, how can that happen? Why is it, are the cars suddenly unable in Spa, unable to overtake anyone? And I thought long and hard about it yesterday and came up with 3 important points. The first one, delta is too small. The difference between one car and another is too little. That means they are all equally fast. And if I don't have a car on the racetrack that is 1 second or maybe 1.2 seconds faster than the car ahead, I can't get past it. The cars are so similar. Think about the GT3 world. This is not something we discuss every single day. But in the GT3 world, the first 20 cars are within 0.2 of a second, all equally fast. Then they race, and you think, great, they'll all overtake each other because they're all equally fast. No, they can't do anything different from the car in front of them because they are all the same. The delta is too small. And that's definitely the case in Formula One. The top group is so close in performance that overtaking is extremely difficult. There's also something else. We had very stable tires On the radio, they said you can push hard now. The tire is very robust, so you can use it well. There is no degradation or anything that makes the tire wear out. You can really let it fly. This removes another parameter that affects the delta between cars, increases and thus makes overtaking possible. And as a third point, this is my main idea. My approach is to simply think about what it could be. The third point is that with low downforce and a small rear wing, the DRS effect is reduced. Think of Monza, where I have almost no rear wing, and when I open it, the effect is less than on a high downforce track like Budapest. And these three factors are connected. The tires, the fact that the cars are all about equally fast, and also that the DRS effect, which is meant to help overtaking, was not very strong. And this shows where Formula One has come to. Now we have, I would say, almost only Mercedes cars at the front. Two Mercedes, a McLaren and a Ferrari in between. A Mercedes engine performs just as well as another Mercedes engine. And also due to the engine freeze, the engine power is indeed identical for all the engines that are running at the top positions. So this is something that has really occupied my mind because it totally surprised me. Why is it like this? Why are they not overtaking? But I believe this is a phenomenon that will continue to accompany us. Unless the delta becomes larger again through strategic decisions and different tires, soft tires, hard tires, and so forth.
And the interesting thing is, this small performance difference, that they are all relatively competitive at the top, now 3 to 4 teams, this currently benefits Max Verstappen because if he doesn't win, someone else does, meaning no one really catches up to him.
Yes, look, that's also something. One doesn't necessarily have to win every race to become world champion. It's not necessary. One can also finish 4th or 5th sometimes. I mean, if you look back at the history of the championship, there were phases of dominance where only Hamilton or Schumacher won. But there were also very different seasons where the top was much closer together, and a 4th place suddenly became very valuable. And in this case, we saw it. So Verstappen, despite having a rather disappointing weekend, extended his lead in the championship standings. These are the things one must adapt to and prepare for. And I find that incredibly exciting. It shows that a team can never sit back and be satisfied. One must always keep fighting, keep going, keep pushing. And that applies to McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, and also Red Bull Racing in various different areas and aspects. There is a need to reflect. I find that exciting. I find it great. And that's why I am already looking forward to the second half of the season after the summer break.
Lando Norris really needs to correct all his mistakes, as Oscar Piastri is currently starting to outshine him a bit.
Yes, so Lando I actually like him a lot because he is truly a great driver, a really fast guy, but it is unfortunately so. One could have started already. So that's annoying, but you have to practice it for a long time somehow. And not just the mechanical part, like how to release the clutch, how to get. It's a rev range that on the dashboard, you have to wait until the lights are in the position you want them to be. Then it's the range where you can start driving, and then you release the clutch using your hand, and then you must, of course, gently give gas again. Just holding the gas there is not sufficient. And you can see, despite all the technology and preparation we have today for a start, it is still challenging. Clutch temperature, engine speed, boost pressure, everything is super. But the driver is still very important, crucially important. So he needs to practice a bit, and Oscar has already caught on. One must clearly say, without a doubt. And what a great talent Oscar Piastri is, that no longer needs to be proven. It was already obvious.
And how important the driver is in the right cockpit we will discuss in your favorite segment at ASKAvD. And the question for today comes from Yannick243. He posed it right after the race, which will soon prove to be very significant and important. And Yannick asks, do you all think that the time of Sergio Perez at Red Bull is now finally and completely over? Honestly, Yannick means he starts in P2 and then finishes as the last of the 4 top teams to cross the finish line. Pit stop adjusted, about 15 seconds behind Max, who started 9 positions behind him on the grid. That was the question and the situation about Perez we've been discussing for weeks, if not even months. And now there was this spectacular, long-discussed meeting at Red Bull Racing on Monday, and it leaked out to the public that Christian Horner told the staff that Perez should definitely stay with the team. Christian, a good decision from your perspective?
So I really assumed that he couldn't stay, that after the summer break, I would say he would continue as a reserve driver and they would use the Red Bull driver pool to fill the positions. But it is very interesting because Helmut Marko clearly said, no, that is not the case. Bad. What he delivers, I am not satisfied. It is not good enough at all. And now Horner says again, here we are at the big Red Bull conflict. Yes, he stays. Based purely on his performance, they should have parted ways with him much earlier. For whatever reasons they have now communicated differently within the company, let's leave it at that for now. Whether this is the right decision for Red Bull, we will see when the Formula One Constructors' Championship is decided. And it now looks much more likely for McLaren than for Red Bull with a Perez who is struggling. At Horner's request, or at least by Horner's statement, remains in the Red Bull car.
It will be exciting to see if Sergio Perez can finally score as expected from a second driver in a top team. What is really exciting is that Christian Horner actually spoke negatively at the bar on Sunday, more than in the past weeks. And the next day this sudden turnaround, so something must have happened. That is not entirely clear to us now.
Yes, exactly. I think there's still internal turmoil at Red Bull. We have the Horner affair, the ties, the Austrians, then Minslav intervenes again, and then Helmut Marko is fired and more. Then he's back, then the contract is extended and so forth. And this continues seamlessly with the drivers. One doesn't quite know where one stands. Is this beneficial for the team? No. A Formula One team always needs a clear directive. This is how we do it, this is how it is, this is how it runs, and then it works. That doesn't seem to be the case at Red Bull right now.
From your perspective, a clear mistake to continue with him in the second half of the season.
I think it's quite unlikely that they will win the Constructors' Championship. Sergio Perez has not just had one slump or spun out or crashed once. He has had multiple issues in many races. It was practically something new at every race, and as a result, he was really far behind the others. Max Verstappen. And it is quite astonishing, actually, that they allow this to pass without issue. Formula One is a sport that is clearly performance-driven. And if the driver, for any reason whatsoever, fails to deliver the performance, then he is simply out of luck. Too bad. Then it's goodbye.
Those who hope to get into the Red Bull cockpit are now out of luck and disappointed. Which of the potential drivers available would you have chosen?
I believe the most likely scenario was to place Danny Ricciardo from Racing Bull next to Verstappen, hoping for the best outcome. That he is better than he was in previous years. He proved this internally at Red Bull by performing at Tsunoda's level. But how good is Tsunoda, no one really knows. What might happen to Tsunoda if Hülkenberg were to drive in Ricciardo's place within this Racing Bull team? It's all somewhat difficult to evaluate. But I think that would have been the most likely solution. It was the most predictable outcome. And then it is clear that Lawson goes into the Racing Bull, and Hadjar is then the next one, I would say, in the waiting position. There are already enough pilots in the Red Bull empire to somehow cushion such things. But it's definitely not easy, as there are question marks everywhere. Even Ricciardo is a question mark, clearly. Has he become faster again? Is he good again, or is he still, slow and bad as he used to be?
It is at McLaren. Now we've talked a lot about the sporting side. That's nice. Now we need to discuss a bit about what has always been part of Formula One, the politics and the surrounding issues. You are not really a fan of the term chaos, but what two manufacturers are currently delivering, on one side Audi and on the other Renault/Alpine, is not very organized at the moment. It reminds me a bit of the good old words of Max Mosley: manufacturers come and go as they please, and Renault has done this the most frequently. Let's maybe start with the French. We are on the verge of getting rid of their engines and selling off the entire team.
So offloading the engines is of course a disaster for Formula One. I mean, Renault, multiple world champion, a historic cornerstone of Formula One. No doubt. I personally feel incredibly sorry because Renault has contributed so much, even in the junior sector. Ultimately, I am also a Renault child. When I began my journey in motorsport, Renault Motorsport was my first point of contact. So in that sense, I find it quite dramatic. The accusations currently echoing through the paddock are clearly directed at Laurent Rossi, without a doubt, who has proven to have driven it fully into the wall, the former team boss there. But also a bit against the chairman Luca Di Meo, who leads Renault. He could have acted very differently there. And the only voice in the wilderness was always Alain Prost, without a doubt. And he was simply disposed of by Laurent Rossi, so no one was left to say, folks, we are heading towards a downfall. Sooner or later, inevitably. How will things proceed from here? Yes, Flavio is indeed very refreshing and invigorating for the team, for Enstone, but the chaos, and now we come to my favorite word, the chaos was caused back then by Laurent Rossi with all his numerous wrong decisions, incompetence, complete and utter incompetence summoned, and now others have to clean up the mess. The team, I am sure, will survive. In what form and under what name is the second question.
That is the big question. Who could buy the entire thing, and what chances does a team have as a new private team in Formula One racing?
Yes. So, I mean, with Mercedes engines and good engineers in the discussion, it can indeed work. But you have now brought in another candidate where the word chaos can indeed be mentioned. That candidate is Audi. So, for quite some time now, there have been some warning voices saying, watch out, over there at Volkswagen, at Audi, everything is so complicated and such a mess, they will lay Hinwil in ruins and ashes. That might be a bit harshly expressed, but the path we currently see Audi taking to enter Formula One is being executed, planned, and now in the final stage, trying to get back on track with new personnel policies, is therefore anything but well organized or handled with care and competence in any way, shape or form. It is indeed quite wild and chaotic. The gentlemen who are currently in charge there, at the forefront, Mattia Binotto, he knows exactly how it works and operates. He knows how to set up and run a Formula One team. But does he get what he needs and what he must implement to be able to execute? That is a big question mark. That is the first thing. The second thing, there are rumors that Jonathan Wheatley, the man who is the team manager at Red Bull, might become the team principal of Audi. Yes, it is a great rumor, an extremely competent man, but can he organize Hinwil? That is not Benetton, where he was, or Enstone. It is also not Milton Keynes. It is Hinwil, which is different. So the difficulties are obvious and chaos can indeed be mentioned. The word can be used here perhaps in a milder form, chaotic, which is not as bad as chaos. Chaotic, you can definitely use that in this context. I cross my fingers for everyone involved, especially Hinwil. Crossing fingers because you almost have to worry more about them than Enstone. I mean, Flavio ruled Enstone successfully for many years and will get it back on track again. There will be the right people to buy and finance the team, and it will run as an independent Formula One team. What Audi will do? They have my utmost sympathy. I really cross my fingers for them. But what you see in the process, you are already falling behind. So it is not that simple.
It already seems extremely corporate. The question is always how much corporate interference a Formula One team can handle. Usually people say nothing. Sometimes it can be a bit good, but the chaos you mentioned, probably not here.
Yes, well, I mean, you quoted Max Mosley. Manufacturers come and go as they please. This is a corporation, and a corporation exists so that shareholders, the investors, get the profit they rightfully deserve, that the employees are doing fine, that many cars are sold, and Formula One is sometimes part of the plan, sometimes not. And you already have seen, or I personally have seen, many manufacturers come and go in all my extensive experience. I have seen the same ones come back again. The best example of this is Honda. They come and go, come and go. It's always an up and down cycle. But it is indeed very difficult. Not impossible, but it's no easy task, even for a man like Mattia Binotto, who is truly and exceptionally highly competent. So you can't say in any way that he doesn't know how it works or operates.
And then the best part is, they sometimes come back before they even left. So it's quite spectacular and amazing what they do. But now we bid farewell for the summer break, hoping to see you again soon.